And we'll be scheduling our next meeting date towards the end of this meeting. And we will be inviting affordable housing to that meeting. So first up tonight, we have a presentation for the Engine 25 Historic Preservation.
Nate, are you in the Zoom?
I can.
Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect, thank you.
Yeah, I've got 7:12 on my watch and I'm told to get into order.
Okay.
7:14 then.
Are you ready?
Yep. So. See, load it up here. There we go.
Yep.
So you should be able to share your screen.
You need to put your volume off. All right.
Okay, we're good to go. So first, welcome. Yeah, if you'd like to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about the project.
Yep. So I'm Nathan Kendall. I grew up in town. I live at 26 Breakneck Hill Road. I'm a firefighter in the Southport Fire Department since 2010. I'm a third generation Southport firefighter. My father and grandfather also on the fire department. I met with the CPC last year, recognized a bunch of faces, brought this project at the very early stages last year. We decided to table it till this year to try to gather information, do our research, get everything kind of in line to present for this year. So I submitted the application. I got the response from the committee a couple weeks ago or a week ago with a list of questions. So what I did was I created a presentation to kind of go over that application again, kind of hit the points that are the important points of the application, included some stuff to answer the questions that the committee had for me, and hopefully answer most of your questions or get some more questions out of you. So we'll start off Engine 25 refurbishment. This is a picture of Engine 25. This was taken in the very early 70s. We believe it was 71 or 72. It's actually in front of the former headquarters, which is now the Southborough House of Pizza. So we'll start off with what is Engine 25? Engine 25 is a 1968 Maxim F model open cab pump. It was commissioned by Chief Edward Brock back in 1967. It was delivered in 1968 in August. It was manufactured in the wonderful state of Massachusetts in Middleborough by the Maxim Motor Division of Seagrave Corporation. It's a custom-made pumper. It was custom-made to the specs of then Chief Edward Brock. It served in Southborough from 1968 all the way to 1997 when it was sold privately or was sold off privately to live its life in a collection. It switched hands a bunch of times after that, living in private collections, being shown and whatnot, until last year, it popped up on Facebook for sale. It was in poor condition. And the association thought that we would try to save it. And we talked with the owner. The owner gave us the first right of refusal, which was kind of nice. We bought it for what the scrap value was, and with the intent of trying to get it restored back to running condition to preserve its history to the town. So through the presentation, I kind of put in some random pictures of the engine in action or the engine at shows and stuff and whatnot. This is engine 25. From what I've gathered from former members, this was the first major fire that engine 25 operated at. This is actually the mill fire where the MBTA parking lot exists today. What makes engine 25 unique? Right off the bat, it's a classic open cab forward design, which is still used today. It's that snub nose look, the driver sitting in front of the front tires. That was back in the 60s when that design kind of came forward. They were still doing the open cab, or what some people consider convertible. Engine 25 is pretty unique, as in it only served in the town of Southborough. A lot of times, or most of the time, I would say 90 to 95% of the time, fire department or municipality will buy a piece of apparatus. It'll serve that town, serve that city for X amount of years, whatever that department says their service life is. And a lot of times it goes off and lives somewhere else. It goes to rural areas that don't have funding for brand new trucks. It could become a reserve piece for a city, or unfortunately, it could be scrapped. A lot of times back in the early 1900s, a lot of these trucks were scrapped in order to actually fund other trucks. So this has the engine 25 is very unique, as it never actually went to live at another department. It served at Southborough and then went into collections, because it was a great example of the Maxim F model body stock. Another thing that makes it engine 25 unique is the documentation. A lot of times in when it comes to vehicle restorations and whatnot, what kind of justifies restoring a vehicle is the documented history of the vehicle. Do you know where it came from? Do you know who owned it, whatnot? We actually have all the original documentation for the engine when it was first purchased by the town. Another nice little historic note for it is, it's been rumored to be the only F model Maxim to still exist that served at the Great Chelsea Fire in 1973. I don't know if anybody knows about that fire. It burned pretty much a quarter of the city. Southborough responded mutual aid with 3 trucks, and engine 25 was one of those trucks. And another part of what makes these trucks what they are is the story. If you talk to a lot of the former members, the retirees, they tell you stories about anything you want to know. But almost every single one of them has a story about engine 25, how great it was, the fires they went to in it, driving it with the open cab. There's always a story with those guys with this engine. This is a picture of the original proposal that was signed by Edward Brock. I actually brought it here tonight. Signed and embossed back in 1967. These are usually thrown out pretty quick after engines get delivered or sold off. This is the original, this is the log book for the Southborough Fire Department. Engine 25 was stationed at headquarters, and this is September 14th, 1973 is when they went to mutual aid. And you can actually see down below that the log for the day after, maintenancing the engine, lubing all the joints of the engine, washing all the equipment. This is another picture of engine 25. We're operating at a fire. If I remember correctly, this is a a barn fire on Chestnut Hill Road in the early 70s. So what are our goals with the whole project? It's pretty basic. The goal is to refurbish the engine to mechanically and cosmetically. We want the pump to run. We want it to be able to drive down the road safely and look like what the members remember. We're not going for a showroom finish. We're not going for a brand new looking truck. We're aiming for what the retired members, what the old members remember the truck as. Now, the other thing we want to do is we obviously want to make it safer. There's been a lot of advances when it comes to braking technology, clutches. We want to make the truck a little bit safer to operate and drive down the road. And overall, just to save the history of the engine. It's the only one it's the only antique apparatus that still exists that only served in Southborough. So what we plan on using the engine for is, as everybody loves seeing fire trucks, parades, community events such as Memorial Day, Summer Nights, Heritage Day, educational purposes. We have a lieutenant, she's in charge of safe education days. And she would be able to take the engine to those days, use the engine as a prop. Students will be able to touch it, kind of, learn about the history of fire engines, the fire service, how we've been doing it in Southborough. Fire department open houses. We always have our doors open. Anybody can come in, look at the engine, touch the engine. You want to sit in it. And one kind of somber use for it would be funerals. A traditional line of duty death funeral for a firefighter is when the casket is carried on top of a truck. With all the advances in technology, the current trucks that we have now makes it impossible for that to happen. Refurbishing engine 25 gives us kind of that option to, if, we don't want to think about it, but if we ever had to have a ceremony where we had a line of duty death, we could actually have a traditional one. Or if a past member's family requests to have the engine at a funeral as a flower car, we would also have it available for that. There's another picture. I believe this was in the late 80s. This was at a fire apparatus parade in Muster. Muster is where fire trucks go. They kind of show off their pumping capability, the members' speed of hooking up the trucks to hydrants and how fast they can get the water out. And they brought this truck to a lot of musters. And believe it or not, one of the guys sitting on the back is now Captain Ken Franks. You probably won't like me saying that, but. Ownership, storage, and ownership, insurance, and storage. I know this is, I think this was like 3 questions you guys. Ownership is currently owned by the Southborough Firefighters Association. It's not registered. It's not insured. It's not on the road. But if the project goes through and it does become road ready, the association will insure it. The estimates we've been getting back are anywhere between $500 and $2,000, and that's all based upon do we want to add collision to it? Liability is obviously a given, but if we wanted to add a little bit of collision, obviously the cost is going to go up. Most departments that have antique fire apparatus just do liability. And the couple departments that I did ask about their insurance policies, and both of them said it's no more than $500. So it's relatively cheap to insure. The other part of the ownership, I know this was a question that the committee had. The association does intend to work with town council and create some sort of legal agreement that the ownership shall be transferred to the town in the unfortunate event that the association were to dissolve. And the association's not in this to gain any money. We're just in this to save the truck, to save the history. And we want it to stay in town that way. So if the association were ever to dissolve or come into a financial hardship where they can't actually take care of the truck anymore, we would want it to be turned over to the town. We want it to stay in town. We don't want it to go anywhere else. And storage, we do have written consent from Chief Matini to allow storage of engine 25 at the station currently. He actually is in favor of this whole project. He would like it to be stored at the station to encourage members to go over there, learn how to drive it, get it out and show it to the residents and actually start using it. And it's just a copy of the letter that the chief had sent me for the association. I can send the committee a copy of that. This is another picture of engine 25 sitting in the middle of the modern day trucks. This was, I believe this was 96. This was the year before it came out of service. So you can see how the modern day trucks around it are, they got doors on them, they got seat belts, they got roofs now. But engine 25 was still trucking at the fire department then. Guys still loved it, and it was one of the most reliable trucks they had. Costs. No, this is a big one. In the application, I had mentioned cost ranges. That was just to kind of show that we did the due diligence of what it would cost to do this in stages versus right away, looking at multiple vendors to try to get a good idea of how much it's going to cost to do what we want to do. The end number that we settled on was $300,000. That matches with one of the quotes that we got from a company called Sturgis Hauling and Restoration. Sturgis is currently doing a project for Medwin. They have a very similar project they're doing. They're doing a full restoration on one of their engines. It's just a few years older than ours, almost in the same condition as ours. And they got funding, I want to say it was like 5 years ago, for $295,000 for their project. So Sturgis thinks they can do ours for almost similar, which is pretty good considering how the economy has been the past 5 years. And this quote, I attached this quote to the application, but this was the quote from Sturgis. It's a very great quote. I know it's not very detailed because he does things one way, and it's a process. You just kind of give it to him and say, we want it done. He rips the truck apart, puts it back together the way you want it, and then gives it back to you. He goes through every nut and bolt of these trucks. And this is an example of one of the trucks he did a while back of the condition of some of these trucks that come in versus what he's putting back out. Which brings us to the actual process. And I think this is going to touch on the question the committee had about the detail, asking about more detail of like what the whole thing's. So the process of what's going to happen is it's a frame off refurbishment, which means Sturgis is going to take the vehicle and they're going to literally take it apart piece by piece. Every bolt comes off, every light comes off, every piece of wire comes out. He takes the entire thing apart, goes through it piece by piece. He rebuilds the axles as needed. He's not going to put a new one in. He's just going to take it apart. If it needs a bearing, he's going to put a bearing in, then he's going to put it all back together. Same thing with the pump. He's going to take it apart, replace what needs to be replaced, put it back together. Transmission, same thing. Body rust and dent repair. Where it starts getting to the refurbishment part is with the engine. Through the research we did over the last year, we found that if we kept the original gasoline engine, which is a straight six gasoline engine, Waukesha, it is a complicated engine. It has a complicated ignition system, relies on carburetors, which is all old school stuff, which I'm sure the guys back in the 70s could handle, but we just don't use that stuff. And a lot of that's a lost art, adjusting distributors and carburetors throughout the year for temperature and whatnot. And the other problem we have with the gasoline engine is it was made when leaded gas was still around. We have unleaded gas now. So that would mean that engine would have to be completely disassembled, gone through by an engine rebuilder, and modified to accept unleaded gasoline. Or we could go down the route of putting a period correct diesel engine in. So we would just remove the gasoline engine, find a period correct diesel engine around the same time, and we put that in. It runs on the same, diesel fuel is the same as it was back in the 70s, hasn't changed. Doesn't have carburetors, it works on injection. It doesn't have ignition systems like a gasoline does, much more simple, and it's simple for the people operating it too. Instead of members getting out there and having to tune a carburetor or ignition to try to get going, they can just turn a key. And the best part is it's cheaper. Rebuilding a gasoline engine, modifying it for today's fuels could run up to $100,000. Finding a used diesel engine, just putting it in, not having to do too much work to it, could run half that, if not less. That's the route that Medway's actually taken with their truck. They had the same engine we did, and they chose to get rid of it due to the complicatedness of the engine and the cheaper option of putting a diesel engine. Another thing we wanted to do is upgrade the brakes. Originally came with a hydraulic brakes and then was updated 2 years after delivery to a dual air brake system, which is obsolete now. We were going to leave that up to Sturgis to try to figure out what would be the best option for us to put in a brand new hydraulic system or try to get an air brake system in there. Wheel upgrade. The truck came with front wheels that are called split wheels. They're very dangerous. Most tire shops don't even touch them anymore because they're a huge liability. So we want to take those off and put a more modern day steel wheel on that isn't going to be dangerous for people to swap tires on. Electrical, go through the entire truck, redo the electrical that needs to be done. Try to find the original lights that came on from the factory. And obviously some paint, chrome, and gold leaf to get it back to the original spec of what it was back in the 70s. So these are pictures. I got permission from Medway. This is their truck that they're currently having done now. The left is obviously the before picture. It was fairly rough shape, I would say arguably a little worse than what we got. First thing they do is they take the truck completely apart. Here's the frame. They've already gone through the frame. All the leaf springs have been gone through. They sandblast it. They put rust inhibitor paint on it so we don't have to worry about any corrosion from the future. They go through the brakes. They go through the axles. You can see that's the pump has already been gone through. And then on the right is the body of the truck is getting new panels. Unfortunately for them, their body was a little bit too far gone where they actually have to rebuild the vast majority of the body. But this shop called Sturgis is more than capable of performing what's needed to get it rebuilt back to the original specs. Alternative funding. We've started looking at this, and if any of you attended the open house that we had on Heritage Day, we had kind of like a show and tell of the truck. We had a lot of documents out, pictures of the truck, explaining the history of it to the people, to the residents. And we also, the association has opened up a Venmo and an account for donations. So if citizens want to donate towards the refurbishment of the truck, they're more than welcome. We have a way for them to do that. And the other funding, it's not really a funding alternative. It's more of cost reducing is we're looking for donor vehicles. It's one thing that happens with the antique cars is instead of trying to rebuild the body like Medway has to do, we're trying to find a truck that's like Engine 25, where they can source parts from. Instead of making stuff brand new, they can take them, clean them up, and then put them back in. If what we have is beyond repair, at least we have something that's period correct, did come from the factory, and we can put it in the truck. I mean, it's not brand new. And that's also with the engine, is we're trying to find a Maxim truck with a diesel engine to try to keep it, you know, as period correct as we can. The completion of the projects, the association has set a deadline for completion to be before the tricentennial celebration. We think there is more than enough time for Sturgis to complete the project. And honestly, there's probably no better date to unveil it than the tricentennial celebration. Couple more pictures, some old members of the fire department. I think, no, it's not my dad. I don't want to embarrass him too much. So in closing, the association is committed to seeing the engine saved. We're trying to do whatever we can on our end to help achieve that with funding and whatnot, trying to find donor vehicles, doing the research. It's the truck's history, it's the documentation that makes it worthy of this project, worthy of saving. The truck deserves another chapter in its life. It's still here for a reason, hasn't been scrapped yet. It's never been used anywhere else. I think it deserves to be brought back to life and continue to live here in Southborough. And we hope that without CPA funding, that engine 25 won't be able to be saved and put back on the road the way the members remember. Well, that's all I got. Anybody's got some new questions?
Thank you very much. My seven questions we have. Thank you. Yeah, so thank you very much, Nate, for the presentation. Actually, the history of it is fascinating. It's really cool. A couple of the questions that we asked, we certainly have gotten some answers to, and that's great. You know, we had gotten some information that insurance could potentially be very expensive, and I think that may have been a discussion more of at putting collision insurance on it. And that makes sense. And I guess we're unsure what the proposed ownership situation would be. It seemed through perusing the application that it might be, the intention to restore it and then immediately turn it over to the town. And that was a misunderstanding. And what you're proposing is that the association will maintain ownership of the truck and be responsible for its maintenance and upkeep. And then the storage question is, you've got a great place to store it. And thank you. And those were the big questions. There's one thing that I think we may run past the Community Preservation Coalition just to make sure. The engine swap, this comes up in historical preservation projects. The Community Preservation Act, and in particular, the Massachusetts Department of Revenue's guidance on the issue, is the things that you would expect would be preservation. In some cases, they don't consider preservation.
Sure.
So that we would just want to get some guidance on the engine swap. Would that qualify as preservation? How should that be addressed? It sounds like with some of the fundraising you're doing, perhaps, that would have to be steered towards that component of the project. Something like that, I think, in a worst case scenario. But again, something we'll reach out to the Community Preservation Coalition and get some expert advice on it and make sure we've got that particular I dotted. Okay. So that's what I've got. Let's go down the line.
Nate, thank you. That was a really great presentation. I really enjoyed seeing the pictures. That was pretty awesome to see the history of the town. I do have a few questions, though. Medway, did they use CPC funds to restore their project? They did. Okay. Do you know, and again, this is probably a tough question, but off the top of your head, is it fairly standard for towns to, again, seeing as Southborough, I think we're kind of unique, like you said, because it was only used in Southborough. Do a lot of towns that you're aware of go through the process of restoring a truck, a ladder, whatever, a pumper?
So when we looked into that one, I mean, there's always been antique trucks sitting around. a lot of departments haven't, they've been, they kept them. But we've seen an increase in the past few years of departments finding their old apparatus, their old trucks, and then getting them back. Again, Medway did it, Ashland has done it, Ashland has two of their original, Mack trucks. One went through a partial, restoration, they have another one currently going through a complete restoration at the same company, Sturgis. Foxborough, I believe, has 3 antique
Okay.
trucks. This is becoming an up and coming thing with fire departments, is they're trying to hold on to their history.
Yep.
And the value, not the value of the trucks, but the sought afterness of it, trucks nowadays just aren't, nobody's gonna collect. They're trucks, they're full of electronics, they're full of safety stuff. And this truck was like built in the heyday of
Yep.
firefighting. It's arguably the last great generation of fire trucks. There was no seatbelts, there was no roof.
Yep.
There was, the guys would hang off the side or in the back, going to the fire. It was just after that in the late 70s is when NFPA came in and put a kibosh on that.
Yeah.
No more, gonna put roofs on, you need doors, all that stuff.
And why I ask is because I think as this moves forward through the process, I mean, I think these are important points for the citizens of Southborough to know that, we're not trying to reinvent a wheel, that, other towns are, really trying to restore the history. And again, this truck has a pretty amazing history with the Chelsea fire and whatnot. So thank you for that. And, let's see, Ben, you already addressed the maintenance, and the restriction as far as the standards of restoring. You're going to ask that question. And could you take just 1 minute for somebody that may be watching this, which I think is great that we're actually, having it, on the video like this. Can you just take 2 seconds and tell us, and anyone listening, what is the association and what it does?
So the Southborough Firefighters Association is comprised of full-time call members and retirees. It's been around since the 70s. What we do is it's hard to explain.
I mean, it's kind of like I look at it like a friends, like we have friends of the recreation
Yeah,
and,
it was
you
originally
know,
created to kind of like, to help the community, we
Okay.
hand out, scholarships to college.
Okay.
We always donate to sports teams. Anybody who sends us a letter looking for donations, we donate.
so you're very involved in the community,
Yeah,
which
we're
was
very
kind of
involved
the point I was hoping that you would say
And
that.
it's,
um,
it's nice because it's comprised of everybody that works at the fire department, who's ever worked there. So you'll get guys that that retired back in the 70s, they still show up to meetings. So it's just kind of like it's sort of like an extension of the brotherhood, but we're always there to help somebody else.
Got it. Okay, Nate, thank you again. This was a great presentation. I really enjoyed learning more about it, and I look forward to going through the process. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. I'm looking through the questions that we'd sent before, and you really answered, I think, everything that we had put down. It was great to see more of the pictures, hear more of the history, and also understand how other towns are doing this, to see the process in Medway, to understand their quote and how that informs the quote we got. I think my one question was on the timeline. Typically, how long does it take Sturgis to complete this type of work?
It ranges. It all depends on availability of parts, the condition of the truck when they finally get it apart, if things can be saved.
Yep.
I know Medway's project was pushed out another 6 months because the body of the truck was just in such a bad condition. It was better off for them just to rebuild it. So that was a big delay. Sometimes things just go smooth. I believe Sturgis said it was to pretty much allocate a year for getting it, going through everything, because he's doing multiple projects all at once too. So that's what we're looking at. We're looking at a year. I'd probably say a little bit more than a year, seeing what's happening with Medway's process. That's about it.
Yeah. Thank you. No, that's helpful to know. And with the goal of the tricentennial and Springtown meeting, all of that lines up. So thank you. That's it.
Thanks, Nate, for your presentation, and also thanks for the tour. I think it was last year, right?
Last year.
Okay, time flies, but that was really useful as well to get a sense of it, and also to know that you were planning on this, putting this application forward. So as you know, I'm the historical representative, so we have two requirements here. One is that we have to make a determination, or historical, sorry, has to make a determination that the whatever you're restoring or preserving rather is relevant to the history of the town. And I think it's clearly, you made that case very well, that, it's only served in Southborough. And I don't think there's any question about that. I do have a concern, or I guess maybe a question about the swapping of the engine that, to be honest with you, this is the first application of this kind in which, it's not a house or something in which you're preserving the exterior or a document, but there's different pieces here. So, if you're replacing a part of the truck or upgrading it or something, whether or not that counts as preservation and is fundable, I don't know. But so I do have that question, and maybe that could result in, you finding a funding offset somewhere, and we'd only be able to fund the parts.
Gotcha.
It seems very strict, the requirements based on my experience, but, maybe there's an argument to be made that, those tires are unsafe and they have to be upgraded or something, and that, I don't know, but, let's see. And yeah, the main concern that or question, I guess, that I still have is about the ownership. Oftentimes with historical assets, especially with private groups, I think it's been the CPC's policy and practice to make sure that the town's investment is kind of secured. And so with a historic building, that often means a preservation restriction so that, the town puts all this money into the building, and then, the owner can't just take the money and sell it and, make a quick buck on it or something. So I do have, I guess, a concern that because you are a private organization, that essentially, how would we make sure that both that there's public access to the truck? I know that you're planning on doing that, but I don't know if that would be a way to ensure that the public can actually see it at certain times or something like that, as well as just ownership. You said kind of if the association dissolves, but what happens if the association just doesn't want to? I'm not saying this is, but down the road, 30 years from now or something, the association just doesn't want the public to see the truck anymore or something, then, that could kind of be like $300,000 wasted essentially in terms of public funds. So some sort of guarantee would be something that I'm looking for or interested in. But other than that, I think it's a really interesting application, and I'm happy you brought it forward.
Just gonna
Thanks.
jump in real quickly. So
Yep.
we have sort of a precedent for this with the Buck family flag, where the Historical Society actually signed an affidavit that addressed these concerns to protect, the town's interest in the artifact. And I think, did you say that you're speaking with town council? Oh,
We haven't done it yet.
But you're going to, yeah.
Speak with town council.
Okay,
Form some sort of legal agreement where
great.
it goes straight to the town if anything.
Yeah, so our town council, Jay Tellerman, seems to have a very firm grasp on Community Preservation Act and all of its interesting requirements. And I think he could help craft the document that would satisfy CPA and give us the confidence that we're protecting the town's interest. And then Grant, I shared the question about the engine swap, but Freddie, you said
Well, no, I will ask more about it, but it's somewhat
Did you write
similar.
down? Sorry.
It's somewhat similar to thinking about home preservation. If it didn't have a furnace, and you're restoring it to make it use, you would be able to put a furnace in. So I will double check, because what the restoration requirements are for a vehicle, if there's standards, and I have a call in later with Stuart. So I'll add that to the list. There may be certain things about a vehicle that we haven't thought of because we haven't done one before. But especially if you're, what Ben said, if you're fundraising other ways of getting funding in, that you can, if it's not quite an allowable use, that it could go, the private funds go towards that component. So,
And what I can do too, prior to the next meeting, is I'll pull all the information I can find about Medway and the requirements that they did, and, that might be helpful to us as well as we move forward. And again, as Freddie said, I think there's things that we hadn't probably thought about that, may come up. So that might be useful as well. But I'll pull some of that stuff and get it to Ben, and he can distribute it before the next meeting
Thank
or
you.
the next time we discuss it.
Thank you, Lisa. I'm sorry, Doug, didn't mean to get.
No, it's fine. So again, thank you for the presentation as well. Appreciate the detail and the history. I think you guys have really asked all of my comments or concerns. From a third-party perspective, I'm not necessarily concerned about the engine being changed out per se. It is about just funding applicability type of thing, but it's like inside a house. If you don't see it, it's not the historic part of it. I had more logistical question more for the board. How much CPA funds are available in fiscal year 25?
So we don't have the number yet. We are eagerly awaiting it. It's,
meeting.
yeah, so we anticipate having it by the next meeting. It seems like it should be such a cut and dry thing. And it's not, and it has to do with the number of bonds that are out and the way that they've been issued, and some recently issued bonds. Trying to figure out exactly what we're going to have available is a complicated process, and town accountant has been working diligently on it. We're getting it next meeting.
Okay, and any sense of range or no, it's still too wild? I'm just curious.
The range would be pretty large.
Yep.
I'd say, I'd feel comfortable saying between $300,000 and $500,000. But
Yep.
Again, I may not even catch it in that range.
Okay.
So we will, we'll be finding out soon though.
Yeah. I mean, my only other comment is obviously a significant amount, of money. Definitely be curious as you guys do fundraising, maybe there's some match or something else. I just thinking about town meeting and going to it, and seeing what else has been approved in the past. It just seems it's a big amount of money. So that would be the only thing I would, at least, preface or put out there, but it's definitely a unique engine, definitely really unique to find something that's only served in Southborough, and have that kind of history. So, that definitely is unique and different. So, but thank you. Really appreciate the presentation.
I just want to touch on one thing, public access. Part of the chief's thinking with keeping it at the station is fire station's open 24/7. Want to come over and see it, go sit in the front seat, have at it. It'll always be available to the public. We'll treat it just like any other truck.
Yeah.
You want to come visit, doors open.
You guys do that now?
Fantastic.
Can I
Fantastic. Yeah, please, Freddie.
jump in? I was going to make a suggestion that maybe the committee think about things and I will ask Stuart as well from the coalition, that would be in any legal affidavit, and get back in that, before you go to the town council, get the input from the committee on what they would want to see in it. So you don't go down a path that doesn't include everything that a discussion might benefit.
Great point. And before I forget, so do we have anyone from the public joining us in the Zoom queue? Okay, if there's anyone from the public here this evening who wishes to ask a question or make a comment on this project, please use the raise hand function and we'll promote you right up so you can do that. Okay, no hands. Anybody joining us here tonight in person who'd like to ask a question, make a comment? Okay. Well, Nate, thank you very much for coming in this evening. So you answered all the questions that that we had asked, which is fantastic. We're gonna, like we said, we're gonna touch base with the Community Preservation Coalition just to get an answer on the engine swap issue, and then with the we'll be finding out for our next meeting what funding will be available this year. A lot's going to depend on that. We've have a total of 6 applications this year, and the committee has. It seemed like it was going to happen last year and didn't quite, but I think for the very first time we're going to be in a position where there will be more funding requests than there are funds available to fund them. So if that does happen, we'll have to, that'll be a discussion we'll have to have, but obviously it'll be in a public meeting and yeah, we'll take it from there. So yeah, we're eagerly awaiting our report from town accountant.
Thank you.
Nate, thank you for coming.
Thank you very much. Okay, so next up, we have the town common railing and fence post historic preservation. A great application. so, yeah.
Absolutely. Probably one of the better ones. Yeah.
Welcome, Andrew and Kevin. Thanks for joining us
Thanks.
tonight.
Thanks, CPC.
Do you have a presentation or anything, Andrew, that you need to?
No.
Okay.
Yeah, so we spoke briefly by phone the other day, and I pointed out to Andrew that this is the application itself, I think, is the most complete, thoughtfully prepared CPC application that I've seen in the 10 years that I've been doing this. So thank you very much for putting the work into that.
Well, really, I have to thank Bill Thunder
Yeah.
because the real substance of it was the memo that he put together.
Yeah.
All the work that he had done, all the supporting pictures. So it's something that we've been working on for a long time, thinking about, things, kind of a long list of things that need to be fixed around town. I know this is something Kevin and I had talked about beginning 2 years ago, even
Yeah.
longer than that.
Andrew, I think your microphone may be off. There we go.
Yeah.
Also, I'm bringing Bill over just so, as a panelist, just so you know.
Sure. So, the credit to the completeness of the application goes to Bill because he put together the very substantive memo that explains the different options.
Yes.
And it's something we've been talking about doing for a long time. I know Kevin and I have talked about this for a while. And, I like on the select board, they kind of each year doing a goal setting, meeting where we just have a list of longer term, short term, medium term. So this is on a list of the shorter term. It's not that difficult to put together this application, get it done by August 31st, try to get this on the warrant for the annual town meeting in 2025.
Yes.
So I can give a little history of talk more about it or speak to some of the questions that you have in the letter that I got.
I'm trying to think back. The
Or if you just have questions and
yeah.
Those are the questions.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So Andrew gave me a call the other day and was asking, I think it was primarily about the one comment that the application needs to be on the official form. And I told him that at the end of the process, that will need to take place. As folks may recall, Freddie, Lisa, and I met with town council about 6 weeks ago now. And this was relative to the whole issue of the memoranda of understanding versus grant agreements and all that. And his recommended path forward for town projects, because we can't enter into a contract with the town. We can't do the memorandum of understanding. We can't do the grant agreement. What he recommended is throughout the process, get the application updated to contain, everything covered during the application process, and then simply reference that application in the warrant article that gets submitted to town meeting. So for that reason, by the end of this process, and certainly covering any discussions that we have tonight, there is a Word document format file with the application in it that's very easy to fill out. I think there was some confusion this year there was a PDF that couldn't be edited and, yeah. So we can make sure that you have access to that Word document, and just by the end of the application process, we'll just need a current
okay.
version of it. And just want to make sure I'm not missing anything. Yeah, so There were, of the three estimates, you know, of course, there's a big difference between the historically accurate historical preservation and the simply getting it back looking neat. And along with that, you know, if there were other funds available, the project could probably be done less expensively. And for the many of the reasons, you know, when we were talking with Nate previously, you know, with CPA funds, the standards for historical preservation are fairly strict. So we ask every applicant if there are other funding alternatives that have been considered, you know, in whole or in part for the project.
Okay, so, I asked, I think I asked you, I haven't done a deep dive research
Right.
into grant eligibility for this, but I mean, I've asked around, I've asked Bill, I've asked Kevin, and are you aware of any grants that might cover this? No one has been able to identify something right away. You know, another trade-off is, I mean, the time frame to get this done is kind of pretty much the same one that Nate was talking about.
Right.
It's nice to get this done by the tricentennial.
Oh,
It's on the
absolutely.
to-do list. It's actually in pretty bad condition right now, so it does need to be fixed.
Yep.
So the reason why we as a board thought this was the best way to go is I've always thought a project like this is one of the, like, the heartland things of the CPA, right?
Yep.
And it's something that we could get done with town meeting approval, you know, in the spring. The different grant processes, I'm familiar, like with the one-stop application where we haven't been as successful in, you know, getting grants approved as we would like. It's a more complicated process than you might think, and there's increasingly a lot of competition for that. So that's what I can say about that. I know there's a question about ARPA. We never really seriously,
Okay.
you know, considered that. We actually, at our meeting last night, we made the final votes to allocate all of the ARPA funds so that they're contractually committed by the end of this year, which is required
Yep.
under the rules. So, I mean, it's something we could do just with an ordinary town meeting warrant article. And if we were to do the quote one, that's less than $4,000, we wouldn't be bothering you, with something like that.
Yeah, there's an intermediate one that was in
I
the,
think,
yeah,
Kevin, sorry to put you on the spot, when we've talked about the opinions of what would you like to do, right? In terms of the cost difference. My recollection is you felt pretty strongly about, didn't like the post and chain. It's something that's kind of different. The true, more, maintaining the existing materials and look of the granite post and rail system would be the option 3, where, from what I understand from Bill, to do that, you should engage our engineer to create some bid documents and then
Yep.
bid it out. Is that right? Bill?
That is correct. Anytime you get this level of magnitude with a project, the scope becomes very important, particularly if you're restoring historic features. You want to make sure that they're done properly and you're achieving the desired effect. So to that end, I think it's important and valuable to have a set of bid documents prepared so that competing contractors can bid on a finite scope and everybody knows what they're bidding on.
Yeah, and our best
Yep.
rough estimate of the spend, inclusive of the engineering fee, is 110. So that's the number.
Yep. Yep. Okay, thank you. Yeah, like I said, we ask every applicant if the, what other funding sources have been considered, and it sounds like some thought has been given to that.
Ben, do you mind if I add to that?
Yeah, please.
So one, I think you're probably aware of it, that I've looked into is the Mass Preservation Projects Fund, which is at the State Mass Historical Commission. I mistakenly thought that was only for historic buildings, but it's actually also for historic resources, landscapes, other things like that. So I was just taking a look, and I don't know exactly how the grant program works, but the application for that is in March. Well, so we're talking about next year's town meeting, so this is this year's dates, but March 15th. And then the award, whoever they choose, is awarded by June. I know it's a reimbursable grant, so I think you have to have the funds available, and I don't know how that works with town meeting scheduling and stuff like that, but
We can condition.
just wanted to let,
But again, Grant?
sorry?
What's the name of the grant program?
Oh, Mass Preservation Projects Fund. And it's only for municipalities and nonprofits are eligible for those. So again, I don't know exactly how the reimbursable part works and with funds available and how exactly all of that works, but that is one that I guess that would probably be, you do it.
It's a reimbursement mechanism rather than a.
That's a 50% state funded reimbursable matching grant program. Yeah.
Right, and I would just throw in that, for instance, that was the mechanism that Salem restored a fence around their common,
Yeah,
quite a bit more elaborate than what we have.
yes.
Similar to what you would see around the public garden in Boston or in the common. And that was done in a combination of CPA funds and from Mass Historical, the Preservation Projects Fund. It's a difficult mechanism, and the timing did not align. And it, I was aware of that, but it struck me that it was probably not viable but it just throws the timing off quite
So-
considerably.
Can I jump in? I
Yeah.
think there may be a way to address this
Yeah.
that I think would be amenable to everybody. We can, and we've done this in the past. In fact, we did it with using different funding mechanisms, but with the Trails Committee and the Burroughs Loop Trail. What we could do, assuming the committee, votes in favor and puts an article together, is condition that article to allow for if the article gets approved at spring annual town meeting, the funds don't become available until July 1st. We could condition the article such that any funds awarded by, for instance, an MPPF grant will be, will offset, you know what I mean?
Right.
But that, I don't think that would harm the schedule at all. I think if we conditioned it that way, and it would allow the flexibility for applying for the grant.
Now, just thinking this through, so is this a public grant program or a private?
It's public, it's the Mass Historical Commission,
Okay,
yeah,
so.
which is
do you
under the
think that
Secretary of
There'd be
State.
a chicken and egg problem where if we applied to them, they'd say, well, have you considered CPA money or?
We have funded projects that they have previously already issued a grant for, including right next door, the St. Mark's Bell Tower, had received a $50,000 MPPF grant, and we subsequently, the following year, successfully passed a CPA appropriation. Yes, please.
CPA legislation specifically addressed this, where many state grants don't allow you to match with other state-funded monies. And CPA specifically is exempt from that requirement. So because CPA has state contributions for the state match, it is still fully allowable to match this grant. So
What we'd like to do is get approved for the whole 110, and then we would pursue the 50, and then if we get the 50, then we only spend 60.
And I think, too, Andrew, that's a great sell for town meeting, that you have applied for this and you're not looking to potentially tie up, more CPC funds than you need to. And if the grant comes back, no, town meeting has, I think is going to be very amenable to this.
And just want to clarify, that's what I was thinking in terms of, I wasn't requesting that you revise it down, but just that something to look into, that's all.
Okay,
Including Bills, because he's
yeah.
behind you, I can see from
Yeah.
his expression. Yes.
Yes.
Important thought.
The thing I'm reading now, I have the luxury of being on my computer while I'm here, says that the MPPF requires that properties eligible for the grant must be listed in the state register of historic places. I'm not sure whether or not the town common qualifies for that, but I mean, certainly worth exploring.
The town common does have a Macris listing. And the fence is a contributing component, so I suspect it would qualify on that basis. If that helps.
Great. Yeah, and Andrew, so what we're talking about is an article for the appropriation of the entire $110,000 with a condition in there that that amount will be reduced by the amount of any grant subsequently awarded.
Makes sense to me.
Okay,
I will double check on the best language for that.
Yep.
And I believe you have a historic district in the downtown area.
Yes, national, yeah, the
That is,
common area is part of the National Red.
that is the requirement.
Right.
Being on Macris doesn't do it because that's why we couldn't get funding for the townhouse or for the library. But as soon as you got the historic district, you would have qualified if that had been in place when we, when the
Right,
CPC.
which encompasses the townhouse, ironically.
Right,
Yeah.
but that common is in the district, that gives it the qualification for being, eligible for the grant, which is a wonderful thing the Historical Commission got done.
okay, so just like to go down the line for questions, comments, concerns?
Well, thank you, Grant. You took care of my one question that I had. I would just like to say that Bill, Andrew, and Kevin, I think this is a great project. I think with, what's coming up in the future with the tricentennial and everything, I think this really isn't in line. So I don't have any questions for you other than to say thank you for bringing it forward.
Your support.
Great, thank you. I think the one question we had that we haven't talked about yet was the ongoing maintenance that I know we've had
Yeah, I asked Bill
concerns in the
about that
past.
too. I mean, other than just painting the fence, can't really think of any.
Okay,
I mean, if something fell loose or, you'd think that this is a fix that could be done. It's just part of ordinary maintenance that could be done in-house by the DPW.
okay. And there's nothing that needs to,
It's not like a machine or
Yeah.
something like that with a service plan or a roof or something like that.
great, thank you.
Yeah, I just want to say a great application as well. I'm in support. One, just wanted to clarify in terms of the three options. I think it was probably in the letter, but we think that the second option, which is like a recreation one, wouldn't qualify, and
Okay.
I would be in favor of the full restoration 100.
Yeah, and just for clarification, because I think there was some confusion there for a second, that historical's vote, which is, of course, was unanimous, was support of the full restoration of existing, meaning the granite posts and the iron rail, because
Yep.
that's historically accurate. And I would say, by the way, and it goes to the maintenance issue, is that we're not 100% sure when there's a very interesting history with regard to this fence, and when the soldiers monument, that's the Civil War obelisk that's right out front here, was put up in 1867. That area was given a wooden fence, and at one point it prompted a dispute that carried somewhere into the 1880s with Pilgrim Church about the Pilgrim Church claimed that the fence was on their land, and somebody took it down at one point, and then the town came back after the mid-1880s and put the fence that we see today, and the retaining wall was built back in the 1860s in the steps, and then, but somewhere you would say after mid-1880s, 1890s was when this fence was put up. So it's 130, something odd years old. And a proper restoration, I would hope, would give it another century of, minimal maintenance, painting once in a while, but it should hold up.
I have no idea how it came into its current conditions.
Yeah,
Yeah.
well, yeah,
It wasn't anything for a long time.
yeah, exactly.
But yeah, so I would be in favor of the most expensive, the full restoration. But yeah, thanks again for the application, and I hope it passes.
Yeah, so I think, honestly, I think it's awesome. I think it's a great idea. Again, appreciate the clerk. I was going to ask which one you guys are really focused on. And the third, I mean, to me is unique. The second one is, you can see that in many towns today. And it's very unique. I'll be curious to see what height you guys decide to go with, because it runs from 1 foot off the ground to like 3.5 feet off the ground. But, but I think it's a great idea. I think it'd be great to get it done before the tricentennial. And it's also very unique to Southborough. So, so I'd love to keep that and replicate that. So, but thank you.
So just a point of information that let's say 2 years ago,
Mm.
when the select board met and thought about a little project like this. And we first thought about this project kind of bigger, about including also improvements to, Kevin has pointed out, particularly some parts of the old burial ground, that there's similar kind of rails and posts in there that are falling apart. But that's a little more complicated, and I know that we're looking for some other funding sources for that, including cemetery trust funds and things like that. So haven't forgotten about that. But just, this seemed like a pretty easy, straightforward application. So that's why we wanted to do this one first. But I've not forgotten about that.
Okay.
All right.
So it sounds like, and anyone, oh, wait, getting ahead of myself here. If anyone has joined us from the public this evening on Zoom and would like to ask a question or make a comment, please use the raise hand function and we'll promote you up so you can do that.
Now, I did want to ask you about
Yes,
the question in the form about preservation restriction.
yes.
I mean, this is a pretty small thing, right? And it's on town land, and we do anticipate it lasting for 100 years. So is it really required? I mean, I was thinking that on a parallel is the work that was done in this building, but that is much, much.
I don't know that we could get a preservation restriction on a landscaping feature, however, pardon. One thing we can do is capture that commitment within the application, which we will then include by reference within the article going to town meeting.
What do you mean by that?
So in, the application will have to be updated to capture any conversations we've had during the application process, this being one of them. And just that the town intends for this railing to remain a feature of the downtown landscape for the next 100 years.
Yep.
Something to that effect, I think
Sure.
preserves the town's interest in it.
I think
Yep.
that might have, I don't know if I actually said PR or not, but I think that might have been my question from last time. And the only thought that I had really was, with the Main Street project as an example, there's a lot of disruption to the town common, and there's still certain historic features that are missing currently from it that used to be there. And, in the future, there could be a new road project or something that might go through there. And that was my only concern about, protecting this investment. But I think I agree, it's pretty unlikely. Yeah.
Okay. So with that, I don't think we have any outstanding questions that we need to get answers to. We're, as we said to Nate previously, we're anxiously awaiting to learn the status of the CPA fund balance that's going to be available for this year. It sounds like this is a wildly popular project. And I'm confident there'll be funds at least for this one. But we still, of course, have to wait until we know for sure. And, when that point comes, we would get back in touch just to talk about getting the application updated. I think will be the last piece of the puzzle.
Sure.
Great.
Great.
This was a really complete and great application, and I know you credited Bill with that, and I will again say, great job, Bill. You made it a lot easier for us and answered a lot of the questions right from the get-go, so thank you.
That's very good at just the one page, get right to the point.
Yeah.
No beating around the bush.
Well, thank you very much for coming in this evening.
Awesome. Thank you.
Am I staying because?
Yes. Yes.
Are you going to the-
Doing well. How are you, Kevin?
Shall I stay? All right.
Yes, please. Yes, so the Rural Cemetery Water Tower Historic Preservation.
And please keep Bill on the line because he may want to weigh in on this. We've worked quite closely to get this together. I have some photos I'd love to share if you wanted to make me a co-host. Okay, thank you. I don't. I'm not seeing the option to share my screen, Grant. Oh, you made me panelist, I believe. Maybe I have to start my video. Oh, I am. Okay, sorry, my mistake. So I don't really my bug. Okay, so that's what we're talking about. Should I just talk, or do you want to ask questions, or how do you want to do this?
Well, if you want to give us just a quick rundown, that would be fantastic.
Okay, sure. This tower is really is a really fascinating. I mean, aesthetically, it's a wonderful component of town history and the rural cemetery, but it also tells it a really, really interesting story about actually water usage in the town. Essentially, the rural cemetery had a problem around the turn of the 20th century with trying to stay green. And the cemetery commissioners came to town meeting to ask for money for an irrigation system. And you're looking at the part of the result. Town meeting appropriated in 1900 was the initial appropriation for a system that would involve a windmill, a windmill to pump the water up from the well into this tower. And on the second story of the tower, there was a tank to receive the water, and then they could irrigate by gravity the shrubbery and the grass and so on in the summer months. And it took several years to get the tower built because actually they dug the well, erected the windmill, and then apparently iron piping was very expensive in those days, and they ran out of money. So they had to come back to town meeting for an additional appropriation, and those funds were granted. And so finally in 1903, you got the tower that you see here. And I want to, if I can quickly find it, kind of messed up my paperwork here. Sorry. Here it is. Okay. They paid one Lewis Mitchell $75 for miscellaneous labor. They paid for surveying $5.40, but the main expenditure was for one George F. Cantello, who is buried in a rural cemetery and who actually built this tower with his own hands and was paid $197.31 for his labor. It's just fascinating. So completed in 1903, it went into usage, and it served the town, irrigating the cemetery for some 30 years. And actually, this was all changed by the coming of the municipal supply. Town meeting voted in December of 1929 to install a municipal supply to deal with the fact that they had sort of turbidity issues and the water just wasn't very good, being drawn straight from the area reservoirs. And by the end of 1930, they had half of the town hooked up already. However, the municipal supply, obviously the rural cemetery being a lower priority because it already had water, wasn't hooked up until 1933. And the town report for 1933 shows that the town spent about $258 laying new pipe, new meter for the water and so on. They actually used Civil Works Administration labor, which is very interesting because this was during the Depression. So this was a FDR, works project kind of administration. That was about half the cost was for laborers to lay the pipe. Anyway, so they got municipal supply hooked up in 1933, and this tower came out of commission. And it's been used ever since. Really, what it stands now is a kind of, architectural folly. I mean, it's very beautiful to look at. I'm sure everyone, knows this thing. And it's interesting because I got involved in this in a somewhat of a roundabout way. It was a bit over a year ago where Mr. Cundiff contacted me. He was pretty new on the job and immediately sort of sized this tower up, I think, and realized that, it's this beautiful asset that the town has, but it really desperately needed a roof. That was the most pressing concern because I can show you a couple of these photos. It's pretty appalling, the condition of the roof. And so he inquired of me if I knew anything about the history of the tower and what the roof was or should be. So I started digging, and it was really interesting for me because one of the things I discovered is that a lot of people in the town had no idea what this tower was for, what it had ever been used for. I heard people were telling me that gunpowder had been stored in it. They were sort of conflating that with the way the rural cemetery did have such a structure at one point. Not the rural cemetery, I'm sorry, the old burial ground had such a structure at one point. But nobody knew what this tower was, what it was for. I was still fairly new to town. I didn't know what it was for or how it had been used. So I started researching just to try to get Bill an answer on this. And it coincided actually with the conclusion of the signage project for the National Register District. We put the 7 bronze signs at the entry point, got really great support from capital planning at one point in the select board. We underspent. We came in under budget by about $2,500. And I was asked by the select board, what did I want to do with the excess money? And I proposed 3 things, 2 of which got the thumbs up. And they were, I wanted $1,000 for the historic house sign program, which we were trying to reboot, which we got. I proposed, it was a purely symbolic gesture, but you see the fruits of it, $1,000 for the fencing around the common, which we just talked about, because historical wanted to put our money where our mouth was on that because we'd been yapping about it for a long time. And then I asked for $500 for a plaque to mark this tower, to let people know what it was. And you can see that that plaque is now on there. It went up about a month ago, thanks to the good folks at DPW and Chris Leroy. Put it up, there it is. And that was ordered, and I had guessed how much it was going to cost, and I was off by $4. It costs $504. So that's what it says, built in 1903 prior to the laying of municipal water pipes in the cemetery. In 1933, a windmill pumped well water to a holding tank in this tower, built by George Cantello to provide irrigation to the grounds in summer. We really wanted people to know what this is, and it's just such a fascinating sort of story. So anyway, so that's how I went down the rabbit hole of trying to figure out this tower, what it was. The one thing I did not, I couldn't find any photos or any documentation as to what the roof had been. So I let Bill know that, and but I did speculate, however, that asphalt shingles were only invented in 1903. So it was quite unlikely that the original roof had been asphalt shingles. And my speculation, I think, is pretty reasonable, was that it was cedar shakes. Likely not slate. It might still be there if it were slate. It was probably cedar shakes. So this started a kind of long conversation with Bill about the larger maintenance issues. You can see by the picture of the sign that's currently on the door now, that the door desperately needs to be refinished. And we have actually a nice photo of when those doors were, they're replacement doors, and they were only put in about 15 or 20 years ago. And Bill was nice enough to send me a photo of what they look like when they went in. They look spectacular, and they can again. They're, definitely salvageable. So it was a look at the roof, a look at the rafters. The tower has, if I can show you these photos, it has, as you go around, that's an octagonal roof, right? 8-sided. And there are those, if you see those windows there, they're covered with kind of louvered shutters that provide ventilation, but there are 4 of those. So this is the southern exposure of the tower. That's again looking south. You see the door faces roughly east. There's a window on the east facing side. Again, that's south, and I took a couple south photos for a reason I'll explain to you in a second. That's one of the reasons, but that gives you an idea. There's some work that needs to be done on those. Of the 4 windows in the tower, for instance, one of them is missing its sill, the south window. Almost all of them have some damage. They're actually fairly sound to my eye, but some of them, if you see, there's a broken louver on that one. There's another one that one is the one missing its sill. You see at the bottom. So there's some issues there. And see, this one is a cutout up in the midway up on the left. So there's repair work that needs to be done there. Some damage. I'll show you up on the roof. This is looking up under the roof. And you can see that under the soffits of this building, you see there's a big gaping hole right there. Now that's where it looks, that board is scribed around the stone. And I think there's a missing stone there, some missing mortar. So there's some patching that needs to be done. The stonework itself and the mortar, and Bill, please correct me if I'm wrong here, but to my judgment, looks pretty sound. Again, but there is some minor work up there under the soffit that needs to be done. The soffits themselves, I think I said in my application, and I picked this up somehow in the wind and I was mistaken. Bill and I spoke about this just the other day, and he doesn't think the contractors that looked at this have not identified any soffit damage. I had indicated that was a possibility so
Okay.
that's some good news there. Of course, it needs to soffit the rafters that you can see. This has exposed rafter tails that come out from underneath, and that's actually, you're looking up under the roof. That said, you always have to have the caveat that you don't know until you get in there what you're going to find, so once they start tearing things down, you might find that there's some deterioration in some rafters and soffits. Maybe some of the sheathing up top needs some work, but it actually, but for the paint loss, for instance, that photo looks pretty good. That's another view of, again, looking up under the roof. It's meant to be that way. That's sort of a decorative element. And it's really quite attractive. That's the worst part of the roof. And you can see it looks like it's 100 years. I mean, it's a terrible, terrible, that's south west, that particular exposure. So the roof is in, pretty rough shape. Now, I want to go back because one of the questions you folks queried me about was, if you notice, there's a raised planting bed that comes off. This is again, the south side of the tower that kind of goes off in a rectangle and allows for planting. And in the center of that bed, let me just catch up to it, is a stone you can see in some of these photos right there that notes a trust fund. And I know one of your questions was, is there money available in that family trust? And I had a fairly long conversation with Sam Stivers, who's, on the board of commissioners of trust funds. I always mess up the name of that group, he made clear, of course, that he wasn't speaking for the full group, only for his own views. But with regard to, this goes to the alternate funding question. You know, he said to me that the cemetery fund has about $1 million in it, and which is going to spin off about 40 grand a year. And, you know, and his perspective, and I must say, I agree with it wholeheartedly, is that in the case of the water tower, it is not an operational element in the cemetery at this point. Is it is an historic artifact, beautiful to look at, critical to Southborough's history, in my view, especially in terms of its sort of civic development and municipal structure and operations. But it's not, you know, since 1930, it's basically been a place where they put some rakes in there once in a while, you know, like, and it's probably full of bats and small animals at this point because it's got a lot of openings. But it's not operational. So his, you know, his view of it was that, as you may know, they've got like this one, among other issues over there, one big serious issue with the retaining wall that's got a big lien in it and all kinds of problems and going to cost them a fortune. So, you know, and then with regard to the specific Newell Leary Trust Fund, I was intrigued by that as well because it's right there at the base of the tower. That fund was begun by Frank Newell in 1951 to provide funds, this is a quote now, for the care of the Newell Leary lot. That's simply a family plot in the rural cemetery with excess for rural cemetery general care and improvement. Now that raised bed, like if you look at that, if you see that photo right there, that raised bed needs some work, some masonry work. And actually that very corner that's in the lower right-hand corner, I was there this afternoon. You could lift the concrete up there and place it back down. It's just broken off. So I think you can make an argument that that Newell Fund, that maybe that, you know, the Board of Commissioners of Trust Funds could be prevailed upon to provide a little money to fix up that general area. But I don't honestly think it pertains to the tower. And again, I'm supportive of the idea that this being a non-operational element, you know, being a historic artifact, that it's more, you know, and I know everyone wants to keep their own money, but I think Sam's view was, I thought, reasonable on that point. Now, with regard to the proposal, right, we asked for $20,000. Mr. Cundiff has gotten, you know, several different bids from the same company with different options. There was, at one point, there was a thought about replacing those doors altogether, and I was very clear that you know, I knew that CPC would not go for that, like a
No,
you know,
yeah,
but I do-
preservation, but not a.
right. I do have some question though for you about, for instance, the window slits, right? There are those 4, and those are wood. And, you know, I know Bill and Chris had a thought that, you know, everyone puts now, if they can, you know, AZAC or PVC, that's indistinguishable from wood when painted, on those kinds of locations that take a lot of serious beating weather-wise. I don't know what your rules are on something like that. Is that acceptable?
So we've run into that with the historic preservation of windows on a number of projects through the years. And the Massachusetts Historical Commission, they're is it they or the Secretary of the Interior who issued the preservation standards regarding windows, Freddie?
It's the
Okay,
interior.
yeah. And we ran into that here, you know, in the townhouse is one of the places, as well as South Union School with those windows. they're very particular.
Right.
And they want the preservation of the physical windows that are in place.
Yeah, and I think that's fine. It's
Yeah.
not, again, and Bill can weigh in on this, but it's not that big a deal.
Yeah.
It's fairly small potatoes carpentry in the grand scheme of things to fix those, replace a sill, a couple broken louvers. And I find them quite sound. I was rapping on them this afternoon just to make sure that I was, I think it's pretty good. The other question I had, because again, Bill and I have discussed this, is again, I surmise that the original roof was shakes.
Yep.
I think Chris and, and I understand where they're coming from, we're advocating for an architectural asphalt shingle. That's what's on, and asphalt shingle's on there now. That's just an ugly 3-tab piece of junk, in my opinion. Because of the weathering issues. But there are options with, depending on what you folks would be interested in. We could have an absolutely stellar looking copper roof that would last 60 to 80 years. You could have a zinc roof that would last 100 years. You could have slate. You could have, go back with the cedar that's going to give you 40. Or an architectural asphalt shingle that would do the job and look very handsome that might give you 30 to 35. So, I imagine a standing seam on that octagonal roof, a standing seam copper roof would be
Stunning.
a showstopper. And in the grand scheme of things, not that expensive. This is a way lower, obviously, dollar amount than the fence, ironically, even though it's a bigger structure. So I was really open to hearing what, and I'm sitting here as representing historical, trying to, defend best practices historically, but also be understanding of the needs of DPW. They're the ones that have to take care of this thing. And, and you try to have some realistic balance. Look, in our house sign program, right? They used to be wood, hand painted, a house painter sign. And I discovered that almost all of Eastern Massachusetts, everybody that was running a program like this was in the same boat as us, couldn't find a house sign painter, or if they could, it was cost prohibitive. So now we have our signs made locally in Southborough by Signorama, and they're PVC.
Yeah.
And they look beautiful, and they're going to last way longer than the wood ones. And I had to bend on I can't be such a purist about it. So, but I know that CPC has very specific rules.
Yeah, so as far as the roofing material goes, for an asphalt shingle, the answer is very easy, because that's what's there now. Preserving what's there now, there's no question about that. We would need to check in with the coalition to see if the cedar shake would be allowed, because there's a reasonable belief that was what was there originally. We would need to check in with them on that.
Okay.
We have to be very careful that we don't try to recreate history or something that we've seen elsewhere, create something that's consistent with what could have been there. That's something that I know we can't for sure fund.
Right.
And then just, I understand Sam Stiver's concerns with the cemetery trust fund. I guess the counter to that is that that trust fund is used in the grand scheme of things for maintaining the aesthetics of the cemetery, with maintaining the landscaping, the mowing, the beautiful trees, the paths, the walls, and the buildings that are used as part of the maintenance effort. I do think you're right. Everyone wants to try to preserve, the funds that are under their stewardship. And so I understand his perspective. I think there's a very strong argument that this beautiful tower is is an important part of the aesthetics of the cemetery. And this is a typical use of those funds. Perhaps there's, speaking as one member of the committee, some way for some type of sharing of the costs. So that's what I have to say, but I think we should go down the line here and hear from everybody.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Kevin. I appreciate it. Again, another great application. I'm only going to expand, I think, a little bit, excuse me, on what Ben said. You know, in looking at the inventory form, it talks that in 1900, the town's annual report showed funding allocated to build a water supply for the cemetery. So again, looking at the perpetual fund for the cemetery, we're not talking $1 million for one thing. I think $20,000, Kevin, no matter where it comes from, this needs to happen.
Yeah.
So don't get any of us wrong. It certainly needs to happen. I would think if it came from the perpetual fund, there's A, less restrictions on it. B, it could happen tomorrow. You wouldn't have to wait for town meeting. And you talked about a roof and the shutters, and that could take place tomorrow. If the perpetual fund did that. My one question for you, Ben, is if we do the maintenance on this, is there a PR because it's a building? I mean, how would this work on, I mean, it's only $20,000.
Yeah,
So-
and that's a tough question because, we've seen the difficulty in getting a PR on a large project like the townhouse and the library facade.
Yeah.
And just my concern is that we simply would not be able to find a holder for a PR. I've been thinking about this a lot. It's tough, and I think we ought to have a syndicate of local communities where we hold PRs for each other to get around this problem.
'Cause that's
But-
my concern is I don't know how we fund this. What's the level of guarantee that typically on a structure is required? What would it be on this? I don't know.
It would be certainly a discussion for the committee. As one committee member, I'd be very worried about being able to find a holder for a PR. The discussion could also, cover other ways of trying to address this, like what we were talking about with the railing. Can we memorialize it within the application and include that by reference in the article? It certainly doesn't hold to the same standard that a PR would, but we at least get down on paper the intent and the agreement to maintain it into the future.
Okay.
Yeah, but again, subject for discussion.
You know, can I throw in, I listened to your meeting last week with a great deal of interest because I know you talked about, PRs and who was holding it, on several applications. And my thought was, of course, again, as chair of historical, I certainly appreciate the impulse. And because you asked that question at the end of the list of questions that were submitted to me, and I thought a lot about it, and I thought, well, if the CPC folks had a willingness to pay for it, I certainly take one on the tower. That said, I don't consider the tower, other than this maintenance problem, to be at risk. Obviously, no one's ever going to develop this
Right.
land or turn it into more graves or, do something with it. And so it seems to me a safe one, similar to the fence around the common that we're making a commitment as a community to spend money on this tower and on this fence. We're bloody well going to keep it, and no one, I don't see this is a very personal view that I always see PRs as most useful for buildings that are actually under threat. And I don't see the water tower as being under threat.
So our concern with PRs comes from guidance from
Mhm.
the Massachusetts Department of Revenue.
Right. And
Where it's-
that's
yeah.
why I was listening. So
Yeah.
it was so interesting to hear your perspective on it. And so at my answer to this question was, I just want to hear what
Yeah.
you guys want.
You know, so we are, and it's only in the past couple of years where this is really, we've really gained a deeper understanding of this. It's, if you saw our last meeting, so, CPA is a relatively young piece of legislation and it's a learning process. And with the DOR's guidance from 2019, we are tasked with ensuring that there's a public benefit to these funds that are spent, which is easy when it's spent on a public project, that we can establish that easily. But we have to ensure that that benefit remains in the long term. And the DOR says the way that that is done is through a PR.
How
so-
much would it cost to do that for?
So it's a small building and I would guess it would, well, first, we couldn't get a PR on just the roof. So, and we, there's not a proposal right now to be doing work on the structure itself. So this may not.
I think there is, isn't there?
Yeah.
The work is to do the door, the windows, the roof.
I'm sorry, excuse me.
Right.
I think,
Yeah,
right?
so we would be talking about the exterior of, preserving the exterior of the building. If there was somebody willing to hold a PR on a structure this small, I would imagine it would scale with the building to some degree, so. But it would probably cost about as much as the repairs, maybe even a shade more.
Right.
And why I even bring this up, Kevin, is in looking at this and the restrictions that CPC funds or CPA funds could potentially put on this, it might be more cost effective and worthwhile to just take the funds out of the perpetual fund, get done what needs to get done, some of the improvements that you talked about potentially on the roof, still keep it historic, but again, you're not talking a PR. Unfortunately, we're bound by certain restrictions, and so again, I'm supportive of the project 100%. How it gets funded, I'm interested to hear what the rest of, the members of the committee think as well. But I think you and Bill as well should probably think about what's the easiest way to get this done and that creates the least of problems, if I can use that word, for, getting it done. Again, doing things to the standards of the, what is it, the Secretary of
Secretary of-
Interiors, you know what I mean? So again, I'm supportive however we do this, but it's just what is actually the best way for you to get done what you need to get done. That's all.
Right. Yeah, I'd just say that, I think the wood is very easy to address on this building and to keep exactly as wood. When this came up in our discussions, there was an awareness that, for instance, any artificial material might not fly, and everyone's fine with that and understands it. And then with regard to the roof, I could live with either alternative, a nice architectural shingle or the cedar. And I think Bill could as well. So, if you look at that PR question, arguably a PR, and I don't think we think it's important at all, would be more important on this fence than on that tower, because that tower is not going anywhere. Grant's idea, well, what if somebody changed the contours of the downtown or
Yeah.
wanted to reroute the road, or, so it's just a personal thing. And like I said, I was open it, but I was concerned about the idea that a PR on that tower, which I don't perceive as at risk, would be more expensive than the repairs,
It's a structure. Just don't know.
Yeah.
know.
Sorry. I just don't know what the guidelines are for a structure, Kevin.
I just, one
Right.
quick question.
Sure.
Is the rural cemetery in the historic district?
It is,
It is.
yes. And it's in the National Register, a form listing, inventorying it. The rural cemetery and the tower are specifically discussed.
Okay.
So it does have that also. And again, just so everybody knows, right, that National Register listing doesn't convey any restrictions or protections.
So the reason I asked, and Freddie was the one who keyed right in on this.
Right.
If you get an MPPF grant, then the PR is a no-brainer because it's held by Massachusetts Historical Commission.
Right.
And that's the only way to get them to hold it. When they hold it, there's no cost.
Right.
And yeah,
Well, we could look in that direction, similar to with the fence, and
Yeah.
I'd be happy to do it. I would say that, one thing, and nobody on the select board is currently still here, but it would be great to have the, we have the, oh gosh, I'm terrible. I'm just spacing on her name at the moment. For the EDC, the Leah, thank you, Leah Emerson. I would love to have access to a grant writer myself because this is not my wheelhouse, and it's really hard. I have no experience writing grants. I know we know about the Massachusetts Preservation Projects Fund and all that stuff, but it's a little bit dizzying to,
understood.
go through that when you've got to learn all those rules and, as a volunteer, it's a little bit,
Yeah.
it's a tough one. But that's another argument for another board, I guess.
Yeah, so, okay. We will go down the line, we get comments and questions from everybody. I think the discussion about the protection of the building is one we should have. The DOR issues guidance where it's not a legislative requirement that we have a PR on the building, but it is guidance from the DOR. But I think we can legitimately have a discussion about this particular building and how it is specifically situated. And if there are some special features of it or its situation that we could address differently. Keeping in mind the fact that we're going to have other projects coming before us in the future where we're going to be asking for PRs, how are we going to balance that? So anyhow, a discussion for us to have later on, but I don't want to keep anybody else from saying their piece.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you for putting this application together. I think all of the historical detail about the cemetery itself was really interesting to see and to have included in there was great. So thank you for that. I think I'm curious, it's not necessarily a question for you, but more about the specific charge of the cemetery trust and understanding what it does and could support, how that process works. So maybe just more research on my side to understand that. Because I think that could be a valuable place. And as Lisa mentioned, with a lot fewer restrictions. And I was just also curious when the asphalt roof was put on to the structure.
I don't know. I would guess at least 30 years ago. I don't know if Bill has an opinion.
I don't. I think, Kevin, you've done all the research on this and you probably know better than anybody.
It's a guess. It's appallingly bad. I just sit here in the position of somebody who looks at that thing, loves it, knows the history, thinks it's so important to the town. And by the way, if you Google cemetery water towers, what you mostly see are these ugly, like a typical steel monstrosity. This is a very unusual asset. It's not, go around area towns. You're not going to see one of these in every town. Other towns do have some stone towers, and I'm not saying this is a one of a kind, but it's special, So from my position, I'm very flexible. I'm flexible in how we do it, how we protect it, where the money comes from, what the material is. I just want the thing buttoned up. And I think that was, and I love working with Bill, and he's a pleasure to work on this stuff with. And he's the same way. And again, it started with Bill coming to me going, the roof on this thing is shot. We got to fix it. And here we are. So.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you both for that. And I think just also, I guess I'm the maintenance person tonight, but wondering about that question here as well, that you mentioned the doors are about 15 years old. The roof is maybe 30-ish years old. But just how we can make sure with another or future investment in this, that those things are maintained, whatever that roof material is. You mentioned they'll have different lifespans, but how do we make sure it gets to?
Well,
that.
Bill and Chris were helpful in this, and they simply answered that cemetery funds should be able to cover the maintenance, and that, and again, we're in a new day and a new regime here, so I think there's a, I don't want to speak for Bill, but there's a clear understanding that like the one proposal is, marine varnish on the doors, and that has to be renewed. What would you say, Bill, every 5 or 6 years, probably?
Yeah, it's just, it's so difficult when you get these very specific, tiny projects to really focus on them and get them on a routine schedule. The big projects are easy, believe it or not. It's the little ones like this that require the maintenance. So, I mean, from my selfish perspective, that's why I prefer, newer materials, newer products that are less maintenance and have the longevity there. But I also appreciate Kevin's passion, which is clearly evident tonight, and his eloquence with what he's spoken to. It but I'm not answering your question, but routine maintenance is essential for all components of any kind of structure, as you all know. Something like this is easy to slip between the cracks when we're focused on the larger issues, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Sure. Thank you. And we appreciate the amount of things that DPW has on your plate. So I think it's just from past experience of funded projects of making sure that that is a focus. But that was all I had, but thank you.
Kevin, I think, you know how I feel about this tower. I voted for the application to be submitted at our last meeting. So, and I also took a walk over and looked at it a couple weeks ago or a month ago or something on a beautiful fall day. So it was good to see it up close and personal. So I do have a few questions. One was, I think it was Brett's question actually, from Brett's not here tonight, but from the technical review was somewhere in the application, it says that the requested funding would be at minimum 20,000, whereas the actual amount, like at the top of the top line, is 20. And so just wondering if the request is for 20, or if you go above that, what do you think the upper end would be? That's not to say that I wouldn't be supportive of whatever the upper end would be. I just want to.
Yeah, I think that's somewhat in flux, and I came in wanting to hear what your thoughts were on PVC materials, roofing. We had gotten some actually good news that was lower than that. But I'm also looking at, for instance, today, noticing that there's some masonry work, very light masonry work needed around that sort of scrim of the roof. And there's a windowsill that wasn't noted in the bid that needs to be replaced. And, they're fairly minor issues, but I still, again, Bill can chime in on this. I still feel pretty confident actually in the 20,000, as, again, it depends on the roofing material, but pretty close to the top line. It's not one of these things that, again, Bill, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's not, I'm saying 20, it's going to be 40, I think.
Well, so the reason I'm asking is not that I disagree with, let's just say, if it comes in at 30 or anything like that, but the reason I'm asking is that we are appropriating the money, and I think it's better to over appropriate in my book, so that you'd have them, let's just say you overestimate by $5,000 or something. That way you don't have to come back to a town meeting in the future and, start work in 2026 instead of 2025, or, I think it gets very messy or something. So just want to make sure that whatever we end up going with, if we do, support this
Right.
application.
And I think
Yeah.
as the process goes along, I understood this is something that unfolds over the course of months. We can, refine this,
Mhm.
maybe a little bit better. I mean, I came in very open-minded, wanting to get your feedback so that.
And I will say, in once a refined estimate is put together, it's been our policy for several years now to always include a contingency as well
Yes.
of 10%. That, if you go over, you have to, come talk with us before accessing that contingency. But we don't want to have a project where it's so close to the goal line and they run out of money, $4,000 short or something. So we've always included that contingency. We would presumably do that here as well.
I appreciate that, especially because I tend to be cheap with the town's money. I really do. I have a tendency to
Yep.
just because it's your tax dollars and mine, and,
I will say applicants have been fantastic, and the overwhelming majority of the time have not had to access the contingency. Like, one of the biggest projects we funded was the townhouse restoration, and John Parent was able to pull off this beautiful project without touching it, which has been fantastic. Anyhow,
So actually, I did want to talk about the townhouse, if you don't mind.
Yes.
Were you going to say something, Freddie? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So about roof, this is mainly for the committee, but about the roof. So I was at the meeting last year, I believe, when John Parent came.
yes.
He had underspent the money. He had excess funds available.
Yep.
And we authorized the switch from an asphalt, I think it was asphalt, right, to a slate roof.
Yes.
So in that instance, I know you had mentioned, you can't recreate
Right.
history. So was there evidence that the townhouse had previously been a slate
Oh,
roof?
yes.
Okay.
Photographic evidence.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the difference here is that we don't have any photos of what the roof used to be, and we aren't sure exactly. So
Yeah.
if it turns out to be cedar or slate or something, we can't.
I feel more positive than not that it would ultimately be okay to use the cedar because there's a reasonable, the material basically had not been invented when the original roof was put on. So cedar is overwhelmingly likely to have been the material. So I suspect we would be able to find a way to do that. We would want to check with the Community Preservation Coalition to make sure we're not missing something obvious and not making a misstep. But yeah, no, you're right, Grant. And that was the reason why we were able to do that here.
Thanks. Let's see. Okay, so one that I still don't have a firm grasp on this, but I thought I'd bring it up because we've mentioned it for other applications, is that apparently we require site control of the
Yep.
of either you having control of the site, or it sounds like select board authorization. I think we still have a request out on that, but I know the Historical Commission doesn't control the cemetery, so would Kevin need to get a letter from the select board saying we authorize?
I believe with Bill as one of the applicants here, it is his part of his duties as DPW director is the maintenance of this of the cemetery.
That
Was
is
he an
correct.
applicant?
Excuse me?
Is he an applicant? Bill?
I would say so. The project,
We can.
Kevin really put the application together, but
We-
really it was at our request through the DPW.
And certainly getting a letter from the selectmen, I do not think is a heavy lift in this particular instance. And Kevin, I don't think that would even require attendance at a meeting or anything. I think,
Yeah, I agree. My view of it, and I did, list Bill and DPW as fully on board. I forget how it's phrased in the application, but I listened to that aspect of your meeting last week also with great interest. And I
Yeah.
thought to myself, I contemplated contacting the select board chair and asking to be on the agenda last night, but I thought, well,
Yeah.
I don't want to, they've already got an agenda set kind of thing. So,
Sure.
but I will happily, just if you want that, reinforce it with, and I'll go to select
Yeah.
board and ask them, and I know they're supportive of. this
Oh, yeah, and
project.
I'm sure they would be. I think it's a matter for the committee. As one committee member, I'd be entirely comfortable with, the applications get updated up until, CPC conducts its vote on what funding is going to take place. I would be comfortable if the final updated application simply lists as a co-applicant, DPW. Because
Sure.
they already have site control to do building maintenance, on this property.
Right, that's how I viewed it,
Okay.
from the outset. And so can't find where I said that, that, DPW was fully on board and that it was working with, Mr. Cundiff.
Okay, yeah, I
very
just didn't,
close.
I didn't want to make any, I didn't want to
Yeah,
make your
no,
life harder or
I-
anything. I just, it was an honest question.
I had the
So,
same
yeah.
question coming out of your, having watched your meeting last week. I thought the same thing,
Mhm. Great.
Okay.
Let's see. Okay, so I was the one who brought up the idea of a preservation restriction on it. Where I'm coming from is that, perceptions of these things change over time. What we view as a beautiful stone tower that, was integral to this town's irrigation, some of that detail we didn't even know, like we voted for the sign, right? It was like 3 months ago or 6 months ago or something like that. So I think someone else could have easily looked at the tower now as a derelict storage cupboard that needs to go or something like that. I don't agree with that, but so the reason, and the value of preservation restrictions, so I don't have to explain it to you, but even though it is town-owned land, I think we see that even town-owned properties can be at risk even in the future. And so, again, I don't know about who would hold it. I know it's probably not best practice, but for the 84 Main Street Historical Commission is the holder, which I don't think was the right choice at that time, but yeah.
I'm sorry, if I could just address that. The Southborough Historical Commission can't hold a preservation restriction for a town property because of something called, as I understand it, merger doctrine.
Okay, never mind. Scratch that.
Yeah,
Uh,
honestly, I
I don't think it's a good idea anyway, but just
Okay.
like if literally nobody else would hold it and it's cheap to do, then like maybe, but yeah, okay.
In thinking about that, I thought it was a good idea only because I think in cases like this, it might be the only, it would be the only way to make it happen, but the law forbids it. So,
But so that's where I'm coming from is, again, partly protecting the investment in the building, which again, I don't think is really at risk, but you really don't know what's going to happen down the road. And I think we've been burned previously with projects that we thought were, or buildings that we thought were safe. We invested in and then, are, or were at risk later down the road. So I think that's where I'm coming from on that. I don't know about the mechanics of
Right.
who would hold it or how much it would cost, but
thank you, Grant.
and that's it for me.
I'll just try to keep it brief, but so definitely think we should be preserving it, right? Or restoring it or stabilizing it. I don't really think we should be trying to upgrade it, to be honest, right? If it's asphalt today, it should be asphalt. It's not very visible, let's be honest, right? I mean, if you're in the cemetery, it's beautiful. You might see it passing on the road, but it's not like it's right on Main Street, right? So when I say that, I'm not saying we shouldn't put money into it, because I do think we wouldn't want to lose it. But I don't think we just have to chase it. That's just my perspective. Also, if the preservation restriction is going to cost as much as the thing, so at some point, like, we're trying to, I think my perspective is trying to balance costs and, do as many projects as we can. The Newell Fund, the family fund, is that part of the $1 million? Is that a separate trust? What amount is that? Do we know?
I believe that's a separate.
And how much does that trust have?
That I don't, well, let me see if I have it.
Just more out of curiosity.
I do not know the exact amount, but again, it is principally directed toward the care of that particular family plot. And it's odd that there's that marker
Yeah.
in this raised flower bed, because I hadn't really thought about it. And then I got your questions back and I had to go down there and look at it. I'm like, oh, wow, yeah. am I missing something? And it turns out not really.
It's more just out of curiosity, because if the cemetery is a fund over $1 million and this other family, I mean, it's just more about
Right.
sourcing of funds and everything. I'd be a big fan of matching, right?
Right.
You know, and I do agree. I don't know if a preservation restriction is necessarily required in the middle of this cemetery. I don't think, you know, and I also want to be careful of, well, if someone decides or, you know, DPW decides they actually want to put something in it, I don't necessarily oppose to that, right? You know, but the idea of replacing the wood slats, you know, great. The doors have to be replaced in the future. Like, I think this is a good use of funds, but I think my perspective would be stabilize it, make sure it does not fall down. And that way it's still there. But those are at least my thoughts. But again, if the cemetery is sitting on $1 million that's generating 40 to 50,000 a year, I mean, that's just something to keep in mind and, you know, but be very much in favor of, there was like a match to say, you're asking us to pay for half of it or something, that'd be a little different. But so anyways, but those are my thoughts. But definitely, I think we should figure out how to get funds to it, because we don't want this to topple in any way. So, and when I say this too, if the cedar were like $500 more than the asphalt shingle, I mean, it's like, it's also more, there's no cost information that would help us suggest it, but again, a little bit different if this was on Main Street, then copper could be awesome, but it's just a little different, that's all. So, but
Yeah, I know, I mentioned the other kinds of roofs just as a sort of kind of hypothetical. I think the choice is really between the cedar and the architectural asphalt sort of shingles. And that, you know, I have a soft spot for the cedar, I will confess. But I think Bill and I had a little conversation sort of speculating a little bit on how lovely a copper roof would look, but it would be gilding the lily. It probably wasn't copper. It likely was not slate, just based on, again, the time and what we know we spent. You know,
Right.
it was probably, and that's a utilitarian building.
Right.
At the time, it wasn't built to be, it's beautiful. And I will say, now that the leaves are coming down, you do notice it, even driving down Corderville Road. You can see it.
yeah, I'll be honest. I mean, I definitely noticed the cemetery. I've been driving past it for over 20 years.
Yeah.
Very beautiful. Want to see it stabilized, but again, it's more just to be realistic about the location of it, right? You know, most people don't experience it, right? I'm not saying it's a negative thing, right? It'd be great that they do, but I think it's more just trying to find a joint way of doing this, but we definitely don't want to lose it. That's for sure. So that's my only comment. So, but thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks. So I don't want to create a ton of work for you, Kevin. The only request that I would have, just from hearing from Doug and Lisa, and I know my feelings on this. I don't know how often the commissioners of trusts meet. You know, I know you've spoken with Sam himself. I think it may be helpful to speak with the full commission, because I do feel like they have, you know, the Perpetual Care Trust for the cemetery has an interest in maintaining the aesthetics of the cemetery. I think that's its you know, its principal purpose. And I think Doug has a great idea of, you know, perhaps matching funds. And I think it sounds like there's will here on the committee to certainly take part in this, and everyone, I'm very supportive of the project. I think it would be entirely appropriate if the Perpetual Care Fund contributed.
I'd be happy to, sorry. Sorry, Lisa, go ahead.
No, just quickly, Bill, can I just ask you, do you have any say or control over the perpetual fund at all? I know in the past, there was some issues with some gravestones and, you know, when I was still on the select board, I worked with Mark and Karen, you know, we came up with a plan, and I don't necessarily know that it went through the trust fund. So whether that was done correctly or not, do you have some level of control to some degree over the funds that are in there, Bill?
Well, no, to answer your question, no. What we've been doing is our routine maintenance, what we've carried in the past. We've, you know, proceeded. We've have contracts with landscape companies, for example. So we followed the same pattern. We did not deviate. This is a little bit different, much like that retaining wall that we need to address in the future. That's not routine. So
Hmm.
I would need to go to the trust committee to find out if this was something they'd be willing to fund.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, Kevin.
No, that's fine. I'm just gonna say, I'd be happy to, ask for a slot at one of their meetings to talk to them. Your argument, obviously, perfectly sensible and resonates with me. I'm balancing,
Yeah.
what you're saying and what Sam was saying about,
Yeah.
his operational concerns. And I know about this retaining wall thing because I've looked into it myself and
Right.
I know it's a big deal and it's going to be a big expense. So I get where he's coming from the operational perspective, but
Yeah.
I'd be happy. I'd love to get you all together and
Yeah.
make the sale,
So I'm just going to suggest, and Ben, please correct me if I'm wrong here, but it would make sense if the trust fund has any questions on why we made the suggestion, maybe they could like reach out to Ben. Let's streamline this process a little bit,
More than happy to.
Okay.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I appreciate that. Thank
Um,
you.
So it sounds like on our end, we're going to be checking in with the coalition to see if it's even possible to use a different roofing material. And you'll be checking in with the commissioners of trusts. And if there's a way that I can help with that, please let me know or pass my number along to them. And I'm more than happy to help out there. And I think that's all that we have outstanding here right now. As we get an answer from the coalition or get some guidance there, it sounds like we can sort of refine the numbers and get a firmer grasp on that. We need to have a fairly detailed estimate at the time of putting together an article.
Yeah, that's great. I appreciate all the questions, very thoughtful, the support and the immense amount of time you just gave me. And I think, it's nice to know that you want to make this work. I know Bill and I want to make this work. And I think Bill and I are both take the attitude that we're flexible. We want to figure out a way that it can be right historically, maintenance sound, but, try to limit the burden on DPW, make it stand and make it beautiful for the town. And it's good to come here and feel some support. So it's
Well, I'm
much
glad.
appreciated.
I'm glad. And
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for coming in and joining us tonight.
Thank you, Bill.
Oh, yeah.
My
Thank you.
pleasure. And I want to say thank you again to Kevin because the amount of time and effort he's put into this, we certainly wouldn't be at this point if it wasn't for his assistance.
And folks, I'm sorry, Freddie just caught me. I almost did it again. If anyone has joined us here from the public here this evening who wishes to ask a question or make a comment, please use the raise hand function on Zoom and we'll promote you up so we can do that. Okay, no hands. Okay, thank you. And with that, I think we've
Awesome,
Finished
Kevin.
over.
Thank you. Have a great,
Thanks.
great rest of your night. What's left?
Good night.
good night.
Night, Bill.
Okay. Chair report, nothing to report.
Like that.
Yes. So next meeting dates, we don't have any meetings scheduled at this point. Let's see.
Well, I have the training room on the sixth, so the sixth is probably, unless you're not here, but
The first week of
10.
November. When's voting?
Oh, that's right.
And you need a little time.
Yeah, so
Things.
how about, let's see, I've got so 3 weeks from now, Wednesday, the 13th.
I
What
can't.
Thursdays?
I've got conservation on Thursday, the 14th.
Yeah, the 13th, my sister's in town.
Okay.
So.
Yep.
And she leaves that night, so.
Uh,
Never on a Tuesday.
Yeah,
Oh.
Tuesdays, again, my sister's here until
Okay.
Wednesday.
okay.
No, I'm sorry, Dan. I did.
Microphone on, sorry.
Thanksgiving is the 28th. Yes.
What about the 21st?
Yeah, are folks available the 21st?
I do the 21st.
I would tell you, but both my phone and laptop have died.
Oh, no.
It sounds good.
Okay. And we,
Not charging, so.
and we start, coordinating, a
I
little
have used it.
beforehand. And
Yeah.
So we'll,
I mean, I'm flexible that week, Ben.
As am I.
Twenty-first, I mean, I'm free any night that.
I could do,
weekend.
Wednesday or Thursday or Monday for that
Yeah,
matter.
same here.
But let's pencil it in for the Thursday.
My phone's older, sometimes it takes a minute to.
CBA.
Okay.
But yeah, definitely much better.
How's that look for you all?
This is the 21st.
21st, yep.
Yeah, Thursday, the 21st. Okay.
So can we,
In 10 seconds, 10 seconds, we will know.
we double check with Sarah and Brett?
Oh, yeah, and we'll reach out to Sarah and Brett, make sure that they're available too, but amongst us here, that sounds like a workable date.
No, reach out to-
And, yeah, so I will then be, reaching out to, Chair of Affordable Housing Trust Fund Committee, Al Hamilton, to schedule, his presentation before us on that night. Okay, and,
Thursday, the 21st, sorry.
Thursday, the
Yes, it does
21st.
work.
Yeah. Oh, great. Okay, let me see, 9.
So I'll send out an email once I get confirmation from everyone, make sure that it's a done. So this is penciled, not, and then you'll get.
Would that be applicable to public safety? Looking at it.
Yeah, this far ahead, we should be able to.
Yeah.
Okay. So next up, we have some outstanding minutes that need to be approved. They were circulated. Comments have been incorporated. Folks had a chance to just verify that your comments have been. So the first set were from September 5th. Does anyone have any additional comments or edits to make? And if not, would somebody like to make a motion to, oh, sure.
Just the top line, Lisa is vice chair instead of co-chair. I believe, right?
I am.
Okay.
Yes.
I think
wanna be
that's,
proud.
that's on.
Thank you.
Yeah. But I think that was it.
Okay. Would somebody like to make a motion to accept the minutes of September 5th as amended here this evening?
So moved.
And a second. Thank you. We don't have anyone
don't
online
think
right
we
now,
do.
but we are technically a hybrid meeting, so I'll call the roll. Doug Nance,
Aye.
Grant Farrington.
Aye.
Ellen Maria,
Aye.
Lisa Braccio.
Aye.
And Ben Smith is a yes. Okay, next up, we have September 30th, which were the minutes that Grant was kind enough to put together for our pre-special town meeting.
Yep.
Meeting. Any edits? Okay, would somebody like to make a motion to accept those minutes as written?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
Thank you. Doug Mance,
Aye.
Grant Farrington.
Aye.
Ellen Maria,
Aye.
Lisa Braccio.
Aye.
Ben Smith is an aye. And we had draft October 16th minutes circulated? Yes?
I think we had Betsy sent out the August 8th and September 19th today.
Oh, excuse me.
Yep.
September 19th. That's
Yep.
right.
And well, I don't think we did August yet, right? We started with the 5th.
Yeah, we did not do the August
Okay,
ones.
yeah.
My mistake. Okay, so, August 8th minutes. Any edits?
Same thing, Lisa is vice chair instead of co-chair on the first line.
Oh, yep.
Mhm.
Okay. If there's nothing further, is there a motion to accept the minutes as amended?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
Thank you. Doug Mance?
I don't think I was here present or in the committee yet. I'll just abstain.
Thank you. Grant Farrington?
Aye.
Ellen Maria?
Aye.
Lisa Braccio?
Aye.
Ben Smith is aye. Okay, next up, the 19th of September.
Can I make a comment on these? I don't have a change.
Yes, please.
I would just like to give huge, huge kudos to Betsy for these minutes. I mean, to incorporate and capture everything we discussed on each of these applications at the meeting. I mean, huge thank you to her. I mean, this was so much more than I had expected. So, I just think she should be recognized for the wonderful work that she does.
Indeed, I'm still in utter shock that, that she's retiring.
Sad.
Will be
Yeah.
very, very missed.
Yep.
Already,
Pardon?
already.
Oh, gosh, yeah. All right, if there are no proposed changes to the minutes of the 19th, is there a motion to accept them as written?
Grant, you don't have the same change?
I think you were vice chair on that one.
No, I was unless you changed them already. Hold on.
No, this one is
I
vice.
mean, it's so minor, but,
Okay, mine
It
says
is fine.
no, but that's okay.
okay.
Okay. So moved.
Second,
And a second, Doug Mance.
I'll abstain. I was absent.
Thank you. Grant Farrington.
Aye.
Ellen Mario.
Aye.
Lisa Braccio.
Aye.
Ben Smith is aye. 4 sets of minutes. So the ones from the 16th are still outstanding. We've still got plenty of time to attend to those. That brings us up to date. And we can get them off the town clerk. Fantastic.
I make a motion to adjourn.
Is there a second?
second.
Thank you. Doug Mance,
Aye.
Grant Farrington.
Aye.
Ellen Maria,
Aye.
Lisa Braccio.
Aye.
Ben Smith is a yes. All right, thank you very much,
Dan,
everybody.
thank you for coming in and recording this tonight. I
Mm.
think, as people look at the applications as we move forward, it's great to have such a professional viewing of it, so thank you. Very much appreciated, on short notice.